Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jevly, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted and so very honored that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Please be sure to subscribe to the show in the iHeartRadio app, on Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher Radio, wherever you find your podcasts. We're really excited today. Dr. Beth Brown is returning to the show to celebrate the latest in her Divot Swish series, Divot Swish in the Ozarks. Before we invite Dr. Beth into the studio, we want to invite all the authors that are listening to the show, all the authors and aspiring authors, to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. There's a button at the top of the page that says Authors. Click here. When you click on that button, you're going to be able to find out how you can be a guest on the Reading with Your Kids podcast. It's a lot of fun. It's really, really easy. And it gives you the chance to tell thousands of people about your fantastic children's book. And check this out. Don't tell anybody. It doesn't cost a thing. No need to pay anybody to facilitate your visit to our show. Oh, when you click that Authors Click Here button, you can also find out about our Certified Great Read program. We have a panel of parents, kids, and teachers, and if they believe that your book is worthy of 4 or 5 out of 5 stars, it becomes a certified great read. And with that status comes a number of really powerful tools that will let parents know that your book is worthy of your consideration. Oh, you can also find out about our fantastic promotional packages. You can get a package of commercials on the podcast, message to our 75,000 social media followers, and also have your book displayed on our nationwide network of digital pedestrian billboards. You can find out about all these services by going to our website, readingwithyourkids.com, clicking on the Authors Click Here button at the top of the page. Joining us right now from the beautiful state of Oklahoma, our guest is returning to the show. She is coming back to celebrate the latest in her Divot Swish series. It's called Adventures with Divot Swish in the Ozark Mountains. Please welcome back to the show, Dr. Beth Brown. Hey, Dr. Beth, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks, Jed. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to see you. I'm excited to see Divot Swish in the background with you. Remind us who Divot Swish are, please.
Great. Well, this is Divot and this is Swish, and they are the animated characters in the book series. They're both the outcomes of good shots in their sports, Jed. Divot being the outcome of a good shot in golf, except on the putting green where you take a little clip of grass so you can see her squirt is the grass and then the golf ball is her body. And then Swish, more people may be familiar with basketball. Nothing but net is the sound of swish. And so he is a basketball net. Here's his basketball shoes. And then he has the rim and the basketball are his head.
Awesome. And Divot Swish, it wasn't like you just kind of picked a couple of sports things out of the air. Basketball and golf have played a big role in your life. Am I right?
That's correct. I grew up playing basketball, allegedly starting at the age of 2, watching my dad's teams practice. He was a high school basketball coach, and there's stories of me dribbling with both hands at midcourt, just watching away. And then by the age of 8, he had taken me out to the golf course, and fast forward, playing both sports, or technically playing golf at the University of Oklahoma and sitting on the bench in basketball, but having that collegiate experience. And then as I've gone through my life, sports have taught me so many things. Sometimes they were great things, and sometimes based upon the adults or coaches in those environments, they weren't so good. As we know, sport doesn't just automatically develop character, it can develop characters. So, but for the most part, my experiences were tremendously positive. And so I'm using Divot Swish to pass those positive experiences on to families, kids, coaches, and educators.
Yeah. Now, the last time you were here, we were talking about Divot Swish being in Costa Rica, and I had just returned from a trip to Costa Rica. In fact, it was my last big trip. Anyways, and so I was really familiar with some of the places Divot and Swish were visiting down in Costa Rica. I haven't been to the Ozarks, and I'm really intrigued, partly because of the Netflix series Ozark, which probably isn't a good thing, but it just seems like a really fascinating part of our country.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Ozarks cover multiple states, but where I was focused was in the Northwest Arkansas part of the Ozarks, Jed, and actually went to the Bentonville, Fayetteville, Springdale area to do some of the initial writing for Divot and Swish, and took my mountain bike and my dog and my laptop, and we had a big time. But it is a beautiful area. In fact, another important part of that to me, I'm a citizen of the Cherokee Nation, and actually as part of the Trail of Tears, the Cherokees came through the Ozark Mountains and actually that Northwest Arkansas area. Some stopped there, and they ultimately settled primarily in eastern Oklahoma, closer to where I grew up. But it's an important place to me because of my Cherokee heritage, and it is a beautiful part of the country. So I would encourage you and your viewers, anything you want to do outdoors with your kids and families, from mountain biking to hiking to enjoying lakes and just being outside in nature. It's just a beautiful, beautiful area of the country.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the story we'll experience when we sit down with our kids to read The Adventures of Divot and Swish in the Ozark Mountains.
Well, the central point of the story, Jed, is actually the superpower. And in this book, the superpower is confidence. For educators out there, we might call that social and emotional skills or learning. For the sports fanatics out there, we'll call it sports psychology for kids. But in the books, we call them superpowers. And they're inner superpowers. They're things that we have inside of us. For our kids, they have the ability to be confident. In fact, we see that a lot with kids being confident and then getting knocked down by the way we kind of train them as adults, that we generally say confidence is based on the outcome or, quote, winning the game. And so what this story teaches both kids and adults is that we can create our own confidence. And we can start by simply just practicing and having this growth mindset that we're not there yet. And the other key element of developing confidence or creating your own confidence in this story is this idea of comparing yourself just to yourself. How am I doing? Am I getting better? In the book, I won't say which, but one of the characters is very confident in his or her mountain biking skills. One isn't. And the other character is confident in using his or her voice, and one of them isn't. And so there's this exchange of, oh, you mean I don't compare myself to the other person? So it's about self-comparison, not social or other comparison. And so, but again, the main theme throughout the book is developing the superpower of confidence.
You know, certainly as somebody who both played high school and college sports on a competitive level and then coached a very competitive high school team, the idea of building confidence and having confidence as an athlete and building confidence in my players, that was there, you know, and I got it. And I was really good at it, too. Might have been a little crazy about it, but I knew that it was important. And but I don't think we understand that it's also important to help our kids be confident in all of the things that they're doing, in certainly in dance, which is also athletics, but in school and in getting along with their friends. There's a lot of parts in life where just having that confidence can really make a huge difference in kids' lives.
Yeah, absolutely. We know that confidence is skill and situation specific. And so, but what we can do is build on strengths. If there's an area of a young person's life where they already maybe have some confidence for whatever reason, it could be nature, nurture, as they've grown up, but take where they're confident and figure out, hey, what are you doing there? And build on that in those other areas of their life. And across the board, though, like with my nephews, for example, one of my nephews, he's become very confident in his art ability. He's 13 now, but when he started off, he wasn't. But now he's doing band and playing the trumpet. And so he's like, I'm not very good. He's like ready to quit. And so we've talked about, hey, you're not there yet. Like, what was it like when you were learning to draw and paint? Remember when you weren't good at that? So we can start to take areas where kids have developed some confidence and help them transfer that to to something they're doing right now that they're not as confident in. And so that's just an example. I had fun a couple of weeks ago talking through that with my 13-year-old nephew. So we'll see when I see him next month how he's doing with his confidence with his trumpet.
I love that idea. And I also love, we've talked a lot about it here in the podcast, that idea of teaching kids that you're not able to do it yet. That little 3-letter word is so powerful. I've talked here on the podcast about my niece, and it's at the point now she's 18, but, anytime she's with me and she starts to say, I can't do it, and she always adds, just because she knows I'm going to add it, I can't do it yet. Yes, I know. All right. Yeah, can't do it yet.
Yeah, we should all be thankful to Dr. Carol Dweck, right, on the growth mindset, that she's got books and research and great YouTube videos out there. And I'm not just saying that she's not paying me. I just think her work is phenomenal. And kids pick up on that. My nephews, they've got, I do. In fact, in the book, when the word yet is in here, it's all caps. And it's funny when I've heard kids read it out loud, they're like, yet. Like, so they get it. It goes in their brain. And so I love that. And it's important to know too, just like we maybe can be confident in some areas and not in others, and kids as well, but we can also have a growth mindset in some areas of our life and not in others. It's not necessarily across the board. So again, playing off areas of kids' lives where maybe they've developed confidence, they've started to create their own confidence, playing off of areas where they've gotten better, so you can work back and forth and really build on kids' strengths, which I love to do, whether I'm working with kids in sports or, like you said, in school, or talking with my nephew about art and playing the trumpet.
How can we help our kids really embrace this idea of going out there and not worrying about competing with others and comparing themselves with others, and instead encouraging them to do their personal best when there's so much pressure on us from our culture to compare ourselves with others?
Yeah, it's obviously not easy, or everybody would be doing it. I think with social media and younger kids getting on it, it becomes all the more complicated. But I think it's important to say, Jed, I'm not saying, and I don't think you are either, that outcomes or winning isn't important. So we're not eliminating that. I'm not saying give a trophy to everyone who participates. What I'm saying is let's balance the process and outcome. And we can talk to kids and share stories of, when we focus on the outcome, we don't have a lot of control over that. Kids can start to understand, when they're littles, like the 6, 7, 8-year-olds, parents asking them to just, hey, did you give your best effort? Did you have fun? I loved watching you play. All those things that are about the process, right? But as they start to get older and start noticing more and more how others are doing, and they are comparing themselves, there's a lot of different ways we can do that. But I think just balancing it. So in your feedback, in the way you reward, we want to reward and reinforce effort, and things like attitude. And for older kids too, did you focus? So having them rate those kind of things that they have control over. So a lot of it is in how we reinforce and reward effort. And then again, you can go out and you can take a look and compare yourself to how somebody else is doing and say, hey, I want to get there. So if I'm talking to my nephew, I want to be able to play the trumpet like this other kid. Okay, great. Okay, you're here. You want to get there. Let's come back, and what can we focus on around things with our effort, our attitude, and our focus, where we're putting our energy that we can control so that we can get better. And I think showing, kids how they're improving, if it's a physical skill, videotaping them where they can then see it, like see how they're improving, having them track, a little more, maybe if it's studying for something in school, where they can see their progress, over the semester, over the course of a year. So there's lots of things we can do. I actually have an article I wrote recently that's out there called, and we can share that link, I'm sure, the 7 tips for creating confidence in kids, which includes things like reinforcing and rewarding effort. And there's actually 20 strategies associated with those 7 tips. So I'd love, if we can, to be able to share those with your viewers. But at the end of the day, I think it's really about balancing and coming back to focusing on what we have control over, encouraging kids and helping them track and chart how they're doing with things like effort, with things like their attitude, and things like how they're focusing right now in the present to get better.
I think that idea of helping kids track their performance and their effort and their growth is really important. I know for me, when, I had a period in my life when I went from that college athlete into social work and was doing this really depressing job. And then suddenly in just a few years, I was not even looking close to being an athlete. And I had to get myself back on track and develop healthier lifestyle habits. And the only way I was able to do that is just by keeping a record of what I was eating every day, keeping a record of what kind of exercise I did or didn't do. And pretty soon I was able to see, and I'm finally on the right track, and I'm doing better. And here it is 35 years later, and I still have that stupid little thing that I track every day. But it's great, and it's made a difference. And I think the same kind of thing can make a real big difference in kids' lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the thing you just made me think of, and it's one of the other tips, it's this idea of celebrating the good and great. Right. And in doing that, and you'll see in this story, it doesn't say those words, but there's multiple images of McKenna, the mountain biker, celebrating with Divot Swish. And it's not always just when things are perfect, but it can be celebrating their effort or celebrating in one instance in the book, it's celebrating that McKenna, even though that Divot was way behind Swish when they were riding around on this practice course. But McKenna was celebrating with Divot the fact that she was keeping at it, that she just kept going, and that she gave her effort until she finished the practice course. And so we can celebrate the good and great with kids. And I think this idea of catching kids doing something right or catching kids doing something well, I think it's natural as coaches and for some of us with our personalities just to automatically critique. But if we can lead with things that are good and reinforce the good, because those are the things we want kids to repeat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love too how in the book that the Divot is receiving real praise and support. It isn't just, I was somehow convinced to coach a youth league where they didn't keep score. And, my team wasn't, great. And, but you couldn't tell because we didn't keep score. And at the end of the game, hey guys, great job. And they're like, all their heads are down and like, no, we got killed today. I'm like, no, we don't keep score. And the kids just looked at me and I'm like, oh, okay, you guys keep score. So I think we have to be honest with kids, and instead of just saying, hey, you did a great job, be specific. Hey, you didn't win, you didn't score a goal, but you had that breakaway. You made that great pass. You made that great defensive move.
Yeah, absolutely. And I keep saying this, and you've coached and you've played. One of the other tips for creating confidence in kids is to give specific skill-based feedback, because we know the research out there shows that, if we have the perception as coaches or teachers or leaders that somebody is proficient or a good player, we give that skill-based feedback to help them improve. If we don't think they're very good, we have a tendency, most of us, to give, I call it do good or hey, good job feedback. And then those kids don't get better. So in a sense, then we create our own self-fulfilling prophecy, because the kind of feedback we give to kids that we believe are already good or have the potential to be great, we give them feedback that helps them get better. And then we tend to give kids who we don't see that potential in, or we don't see them being good right now, we give them the kind of feedback that doesn't help them improve. And then we create this self-fulfilling prophecy. We're like, yeah, well, that kid's better. Yeah, that kid's not, whether it's sports or academics or other things. So I think it's really important, one, to celebrate the good and great. And then, like you're bringing up, when we do give feedback, that quote, constructive criticism, the words we use as adults, but giving them feedback to help them improve, that we give very specific skill-based feedback, and then asking them at the end of a practice, for example, hey, what did you learn today that's going to help you get better? And if they can't tell you something that they know, then you probably didn't do a good job giving that feedback. And then you have the potential to kind of catch yourself in mid screw up and still reinforce something that they can take to the next practice or the next day of school or whatever it may be to improve and continue to get better regardless of where they're at right now.
Yeah. And I love that. One of the things that I learned and heard from other parents for decades now, my kids are now adults, But that whole thing of, when the kids jump in the van, when they come home from school, and if you ask them, how was your day? All you're going to get is, it's good. You're not going to get any information. But if you ask something specific, how was math class today? How did you do with this or that? You're more likely to get some information. And I love that question of, hey, what did you learn today that's going to help you do better tomorrow in math, in reading, in art? Because that, I think, is where the conversation is really going to start.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really a great point.
Yeah. Hey, while we have you here, you mentioned early on that made a reference to parents being positive when they're cheering their kids on at a sporting event or at a dance recital or some kind of art performance. Can you give us some tips so that parents can be great supporters instead of being those obnoxious people in the stands that coaches and kids would really like to miss the next game?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I think the simplest thing is, if you're not sure, don't. If you're not sure you should say it, don't say it. There was I can't remember what it was advertising. That's terrible. But there was a recent commercial where they were asking kids how they wanted their parents to act. And across the board, as I was listening, there were kids of different ages. They really just wanted them to say less, to talk less, to be a little quieter, right? And they said things like, well, of course I'm trying my hardest, like I'm doing my best, right? And so I think from the mouths of kids, they would probably just encourage all of us to say a little less or be a little softer, a little quieter. I'd say if you're not sure, don't. But I do think one of the biggest things is that to get an understanding, get to know the coaches who are coaching kids or the teachers who are teaching kids, and get an understanding from those folks as to kind of their philosophy and what they're doing, so that you can then be a team with the coach and be supportive. And when the game's going on, the coaches are coaching. That's their role. When the game's not going on or the practices aren't going on, you're the parent or the aunt or uncle, who's ever the caretaker. And then that's your time. So I think the more those two are in sync, it can be helpful. And I think one of the biggest things that I would advise in terms of what you can say after a performance is, hey, I loved watching you play, or I loved watching you perform. So no matter what the outcome is, or how good or great or poor the performance might have been, that the young people know that we care, that we're there for them, that we really love them and care for them no matter what the outcome is. So to me, those are a few tips, hopefully, that could be helpful to some of your viewers.
What a great way to start a conversation after a game, after a performance. I loved being here, watching you. What a simple message. And when the conversation starts with that, then if it goes into, yeah, but we lost. Yeah, but I made a fumble. I fell during my pirouette. I got an F. It's okay, because the conversation started with, I love being here. I love supporting you. I love you. And I think kids are better able to kind of look at themselves and evaluate themselves and look at where they can do better if they start the evaluation knowing that they're loved.
Yeah, absolutely. And that helps us separate who they are from how they play, or separate who they are from how they perform, right? You are not the score. You are not, in golf, I would say you're not the score on the scorecard. In basketball, you're not the score, at the end of the game, or you're not the score of how many points you had or how many turnovers you had. So really that message of, I loved being here, watching you perform or play, that really helps kids, without you saying it as the adult, separate who they are from how they play or how they perform.
Yeah. Dr. Beth, where are Divot and Swish going to next?
Jed, I don't know if we can tell him. I'm looking at Divot and Swish here. Let's say we have some ideas out there. The cool thing is I've been getting lots of ideas from kids. And I can promise you it's going to be a super fun adventure. I can't tell you where they're going yet. But I can tell you, one of the differences in the first and second book is that in the second book, they have their pets. And I don't know if we can see here, Divot has Callie the puppy riding on the bike with her, and then Swish has Lenny the lizard in the backpack off the back of his book there. So in the second book, here they are, you can see them a little better. There's Callie the puppy and Lenny the lizard. So they have their pets. Wherever they go next, almost certainly, I'm not 100%, but almost certainly, they're not only going to meet a human friend, but that human friend will also have an animated friend. Divot and Swish, they may, for example, if they go play soccer, they might meet Sean, the soccer player, but Sean might have his animated friend kicks the soccer ball with him. So kids are wanting more of the animated characters. So without saying where they're going yet, I can tell you that they're likely for sure to go somewhere that's going to be super fun. They'll learn another superpower, and they're likely to meet a human and an animated friend.
Well, we've had a great time speaking with the author of Adventures with Divot and Swish in the Ozark Mountains, The Superpower of Confidence. And our guest has been the author, Dr. Beth Brown. Hey, Dr. Beth, thank you so very much for being with us today.
Yeah, I appreciate it, Jed. It's been a pleasure.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Our guest will be Emily Calandrelli, the Space Gal. She's returning to celebrate a beautiful picture book. It's called Reach for the Stars. That's the next episode of the podcast. Hey, I want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, I want to start by thanking our guest, Dr. Beth Brown. Please be sure to check out her Divot and Swish series. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Rory Grady, Skylar Strauss. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. Most of all, we all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.